life goes by in a hurry. And if that's the case, why does everything take so freaking long? Mac Engel, Footwear Star Telegram, Engel Angle podcast here on the Sunset Lounge. Wonderful guest for this episode, a dear friend, by the way. Before I get to any of that, I have certain things I'm apparently supposed to read. One of these, English is my second language. One of these I've read a lot, and that is a reminder that all shows here on the Sunset Lounge are free. Free means they don't cost anything for you at all. Nothing. No subscription, none of that stuff. It's free. All of the shows here on the Sunset Lounge are free. That includes Shippy and Groobs, The Clubhouse, Beer 30 Sports O'Clock, Al Maximo, and of course, our good friends, Mr. Mike Reiner and your Dark Companion. All available on patreon.com/SunsetLoungeDFW. It's a little sad that I keep having to read this considering I've read it innumerable times. That is patreon.com/SunsetLoungeDFW. We are in the month of May. I didn't know if you knew that or not. And that means it is baseball season. Baseball season lasts like 14 months out of the year. So, to sit there and say, well, it's baseball season, usually you're right. We have a unique relationship with the good people at the Frisco Rough Riders, a minor league baseball franchise in Frisco, Texas. A reminder that this Thursday and all Thursdays are Thirsty Thursdays at Rough Rider baseball games. Join us in the Bull Moose Saloon. That's in left field. How to get that right. That's in left field. Might be able to spot a member of the Sunset Lounge and the Lazy River. Probably they're going to be at the bottom, maybe in the stands. Or my real hope is that they ask me to play in a game. So, moving on. My guest for this episode is a friend. I actually have one. Singular. I got cut from some list. I used to have plural friends, but now I'm down to one. She is the general manager of WNBA's Los Angeles Sparks franchise. Now you would say, well, geez, Mac, how do you know her? I'm very powerful and famous. I know her because she used to be the head women's basketball coach at TCU, and she kind of lives in the neighborhood where she used to. Now she lives like in Manhattan Beach, and she puts pictures of the ocean on her Instagram account. It's torture. She used to play women's college basketball at the University of Colorado before she was a draft pick in the first draft class in the history of the WNBA. Lasted a couple seasons, and she went on to have a successful coaching career as a head coach at Utah State, Fresno State, and TCU. She left that job a couple of years ago, and last year, 2024, she left coaching altogether to become the general manager for the first time for the LA Sparks. Please welcome my friend for a great conversation, not just about basketball, women's basketball, sports, all these different things. Please welcome my good friend, Miss Raegan Pebley.
You and I have not spoken a lot since you took the Sparks job, which has been more than, I guess, a year, about a year from now. How did you get the job? Because you had left TCU, you were doing broadcasting, and then I see an email that former TCU head women's basketball coach has been named the general manager of the LA Sparks. How did that happen?
How did that happen, right? Everything goes through a faith filter for me first and foremost. And so I think that, definitely footsteps are ordered, and so grateful for the opportunity that I think God has placed in my hands. I always felt, Mac, that especially the more I was a coach and the older we're getting to that stage where we have to just embrace our age. But the older I was getting, the more I realized that, someone can ask me, what do you do? And I could say, I'm the head coach at Utah State University. I'm the head coach at TCU University, or TCU. But really, that I never really felt like that was my job. That I felt like my job, the more I did it, was to build cultures, serve people in the culture, resource them to be the best versions of themselves, leave a place better than you found it. And by place, I mean the people in a
Mm-hmm.
place. And, just really felt like that's what I wanted to do. And when I stepped away from coaching, I was doing broadcasting. I love broadcasting. I still get a chance to put the headset on sometimes, and it's
You
super
did an
fun.
NBA game a couple weeks
Um,
ago. An
yeah,
all-female
I did
crew. Yeah,
Mavs
an
game.
all-female crew. That was pretty
I
significant.
did. Yeah, that was fun. That was a really cool opportunity. But where I left broadcasting feeling like I don't know that I'm doing what I really love to do. And that is to, again, serve people and serve cultures and leave, try to leave places better than you find it. And so, I had been in very close contact and working it within the WNBA and the broadcasting atmosphere and staying close with friends that were in the league and doing sometimes a little consulting. And an opportunity came up through the Sparks, through a friend, and that turned into a conversation of, do you want to come and coach and be an assistant coach here? And I was like, I'm really clear that I don't want to coach.
Oh, really? You were done with
I
coaching? You hadn't
Yeah,
told me that. I didn't know that you were done with coaching.
yeah. I wanted to pivot. I knew I wanted to pivot, and entering the fun decade of 50s, and I think this was the time. It was going to get harder and harder to pivot the older I
Yeah,
got. Um, and
yeah.
yeah, I mean, and so I had clarity and had spent some time with Brad
Oh,
Stevens, with the Celtics on the phone, and a few other GMs and assistant GMs. I have a former assistant that is working in the front office with the OKC Thunder, and just learning more about what it means to really be in the front office. I had my last probably decade of coaching women's basketball. I was able to be involved in the business of women's basketball more, with being on the WBCA
mhm.
Women's Basketball Coaches Association board, rules committee, helping, formulate what our game was going to look like. And I loved the business of basketball. So all of those dynamics kind of came into place. And when the phone call came about, you want to be an assistant coach, I made it really clear that I think that chapter's over for me. I want to move into the front office. And they just were willing to engage in a conversation that lasted probably for 3 months, about, the GM role. And I didn't even know initially that they were searching for a GM. Um, how I would serve in that role, the vision for, the leadership and the organization, and what a team would look like, and the style of basketball, and all of that. And one thing led to another, and the offer came, and that was pretty awesome day.
So, of all of the careers I can think of whose were affected in sports, whose were affected adversely by COVID,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're in the top five.
Oh,
Well,
nice.
just to hear me out,
Yeah.
you had been at TCU as the
Yeah.
head coach. You'd been doing pretty well. And then in that
Mm-hmm.
1920 season, you have what I think is your best team. And you have a team
Yeah.
that can go to the NCAA tournament, that might win the Big 12 tournament. You have a really good team, and you have what any coach wants is, I've got some momentum, I've got some real momentum here now, and I can really
Yeah.
get something going. COVID comes, there's no NCAA tournament, graduations happen, players leave, and it seemed to me that you
Mm.
never regained the kind of momentum that you had
Yeah.
going back in late February, early March of 20.
Yeah.
Did you what if that one out in your own brain, Raegan?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say brain, because that was also the summer I had brain surgery. Yep, it was 2020. There was a lot going on that year. That was a significant year for
Yeah.
everybody, right? And more significant for I'm sure people that are really close to you and close to me, and losing
Yeah.
loved
Yeah.
ones. So, losing the NCAA tournament, having, what it sounds odd to say, but fairly benign brain surgery, like all of
No.
that
Hang time out.
is not as
But
big of a
Raegan,
deal.
but
But
there is no such thing. There's two things I've learned. There's
I
no
know.
such thing as benign brain surgery, and there's no such thing as a minor surgery. It's minor for the physician or the surgeon, but it's
Yeah,
major for the
right. Well,
patient. But brain
yeah.
surgery is, I am sure, and you
Yeah.
kind of alluded to it a little bit, but Raegan, when you have brain surgery, you got to ask questions about
Yeah.
mortality. And did it force you
Sure.
to re-examine the value you put on winning a basketball game?
Well, I think here's what I'll tell you too is I had known that I had a brain tumor, and the brain tumor is benign, but I had
Yeah.
known that I had it for 2 years. My kids didn't know up until about a month prior to the
I
surgery.
never,
Very few
I
people
never
know.
did. No, I
Yeah,
didn't know
very few
that.
people knew.
Okay.
So, we had known we've gotten sidetracked, Mac, but
Yeah.
we had known for 2 years, and we needed the tumor to grow a little bit in a specific direction in order for it to be a safer way to get
God, how
extracted.
did that not
And
scare the hell out of you?
it was a little bit of a weight to
Yeah.
bear, but again, I'll take it back to God, and he removed a lot of that anxiety. But in December, I'm going to take this back to the team. In December of
Mm-hmm.
2019, we had done my regular brain scan and MRI, and found that the tumor was growing in a bad direction, and it needed to come out almost immediately. And I said to my doctor, my neurosurgeon, we're not doing this right now, by the way. This is one of the best teams. We have been working towards this team. I am not missing a game with this team. And we're going to have to postpone this brain surgery until after the season. And he kind of looked at me a little like, and we can do this, doc. Like, we've waited 2 years. We can wait
4 months.
another five,
Right.
5 months. Yeah, 4 months. So he agreed. And, again, that
That's
team was
crazy.
really, really, really special. That
I
team was
know.
that special to us. It
Yeah.
was a class, Kiana Ray, that was a special senior, Jade Woods, just a really incredible group. JC Shepard, who had transferred into us. So, I mean, we are fortunate. So we finished second in the Big 12 that year. And I think, we had built the culture to a place that we were selective. We got to be in a place of being selective of who we were bringing into it. And for us, when everything shut down, yes, it was completely traumatic for the players, gut-wrenching. It was also very traumatic to our recruiting, because the way we had recruited to build this team and this program was that personal relationship element that you develop with proximity.
Yeah.
And we also could not bring them onto our campus. You had a recruiting freeze that no one was allowed on your campus for over a year. And so it impacted us. And I always believe, and we'll see it happen for Mark and the women's basketball program, is once you step foot into that NCAA tournament, it's a game changer for your program. And we had the year before, 2019, been the first team left out
That's
of
right.
the NCAA
I
tournament.
forgot about that.
And the year before, we were in the first four left out. And we had made incredible WNIT runs. We, went to the semis, played just, sold out arenas at Indiana and at Arkansas and at South Dakota, and just incredible atmospheres. New Mexico, the pit was sold out in those runs, but we didn't get in. And I really, I appreciate you saying that, but I'm excited for where their program is at right now. So happy for TCU and the fans and everybody who's poured into it over the years. And and it's just excited to see where it continues to
You
go.
mentioned building culture, which has become sort of a catchphrase
Yeah.
in sports and pro sports and certainly in college sports. But the fact that the transfer
Yeah.
portal exists now and people now are pursuing $1,000 as or 50,000, whatever that number is.
Yeah.
Raegan, can you really build a culture anymore?
Yeah. I think you can. I know you can.
Tell me how. Is it just based on cash?
So, I mean, cash is a part of it. And one of the things I enjoy about where I'm at right now at the professional level is there's no smoke and mirrors about is this professional or not. It's very clear at the W level that this is professional. And I think that right there is a catalyst for building the culture, because you're not starting the relationship with, I don't know, like some kind of poser. Can we use that word? Did that age us using the word poser? But at the collegiate level, I wish they could just start calling it what it is. And I think then it'll be easier for people to just deal with the transaction of it and get to the transformation part of it. And it can be rooted in realness and honesty and transparency.
Does an education even
within a program?
I've talked to your colleagues on the men's side and the women's side in college basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Does an education even matter anymore? Does the 4-year degree, do you even sell the degree anymore as a college coach? Or are you just selling playing time and collectives, and which I know are going to go away, and NIL dollars?
Well, I think, again, when you see money come into play, I think with athletes, a lot of them are going to make decisions with the people they place around them. And they're going to base it off of money. That's okay. Role. What kind of position am I going to play? And what are the opportunities to play? And the minutes available and the system. And then there's this third bucket, and that's the everything else bucket. And different players, different people have different things that are required to be attended to in that bucket. Some of it's mental health. Some of it's proximity to home. Some of it's education. Some of it's, I don't know, like
boyfriends, girlfriends,
resources. Yeah. And resources you're going to provide, the weight room, the nutrition, or the branding opportunities. So I think that's where culture matters, is what that third bucket is, because there'll be a point where somebody's getting down to, I'm going to pick one of these 3 teams, and probably the money and the role are very similar between those 3 teams. So that third bucket is what becomes the difference maker. And it'll be to each their own type of bucket. And that's where I think your culture comes in and can make a difference.
So I want to go back to when you were a player. You played at the University of Colorado. And I don't know if you and I have talked about this or not. When you were playing at Colorado, you played games at Allen Fieldhouse. And you would have been playing when I was on the scorer's table.
We did talk about
so
this.
I would have I would have given you, your props for a field goal or a free throw or whatever else. So one thing.
Well, and can we take a minute? We did talk about this. I'll remind you, who was also on that Kansas team, who I just love. There are a couple people.
Tamika was good.
Right, yep. Incredible. But Jennifer Trapp.
I played against Jennifer Trapp. Jennifer, God rest her soul, took her own life, I think when I was in school, shortly after I graduated. But Jennifer was a really good post player, and I ended up having to guard her in pickup games. The women, some members of the women's basketball team would come to the rec center at Kansas, and I would play. And I remember... she was a very pale girl, right? She's blonde and very pale.
Oh yeah.
I remember her elbow. She got me one time. And that was one of the first times that I had ever played against a woman. And Tamika, for people who don't know, Tamika Dixon was ahead of her time as a ball handler and as a penetrator. She could get to the rim against anybody. And so she's out there 5-on-5, and we're like, she's killing us, whomever it was. a bunch of frat guys and me. And then Jennifer's guarding is against me. And she was a very, I wouldn't say fluid player, right? It was a very taut, I'm A plus B plus C. There was nothing really fluid about her. But I remember she hit a shot in my face. I can still remember that. She can hit a shot in my face, and I'm like, holy shit. It was like, who is this? And so it was kind of, it was like one of those, it was a different time. But I remember that. But the part that, as I sit there and think about players then, Tamika was an exception. There was others too. But when I sit there and watch the players today, like TCU hosted Fairleigh Dickinson in a game in the first round a few days ago. And I'm watching Fairleigh Dickinson, who was a 15 seed, and I'm looking at their players, Raegan. I'm like, I cannot believe how good these girls are. So when you look back at your time as a player, do you think, oh, I could have played now? Or are you one of those, because there's two, when I talk to older players who look at the current game in whatever sport, they go one of two ways. They say, oh, I could play now and I'd average 58 points a game and 34 rebounds. Or they say, I was not nearly as good as these players and I would not get a spot on the bench. Where do you sit on that spectrum?
Well, I know I would have played at collegiate level. I think I would have played at a high level. My dad is a coach. He still coaches at Collin. And he taught me the game. So I had a really good IQ for the game. I think I would have been a different type of player, though, because, I'm 6'3", arguably 6'4", depending on, if it was like the pumps or what. But my dad, being a coach, taught me the game, didn't just teach me a position. And, I had some range and I had the ability to step out, and I had, I kind of would be used today, I think, as a point forward. Run your offense through that person. But so many people back then would see a 6'4" player with my build and just put your ass on the block and back to the basket, rim protect, and that's it. Now you look at players like, I'll say this, a Candace Parker, who we just announced we're retiring her jersey in LA. Cannot wait for that day. Cameron Brink.
Oh, she's good.
Most notably, she's good. But those are long players that were not pigeonholed into a silo of a position. They were taken and really expanded their versatility was utilized. So I think I would have played at that high level at college. I think I would have played differently, but I don't know that I would have made the W, because my athleticism is not anywhere near a Cameron Brink or Candace Parker. Let's be very clear. And I think the athleticism at this level is so exceptional, and it just continues to improve. And it's something exciting that's happening with women's volleyball.
Oh my God.
I think across the country at the collegiate level.
They're so good. And, you mentioned something that I don't think I knew this. You were selected in the first ever WNBA draft. Is that correct?
That's right.
So when you were picked, did you have any thought, trepidation, or when you talked to your friends when you were picked? That's a very exciting time. It was a very exciting time for women's sports in this country. That's a trend. That's one of those, moments in time that you look back on and say, it really, because it didn't just change basketball, it changed society. But when you were there and you were picked, Raegan, did you think, I don't know if this thing's going to make it?
Well, no, I didn't think that. I don't think I was thinking about tons about longevity. But what I will say is the timing of it. It wasn't announced until as my senior year was starting at Colorado. And I didn't enter my freshman year of college, sophomore year of college, graduate high school with a goal to play in the W. Because there was no goal. There was no W, right? And, I was trying to decide, am I going to go play overseas, or am I going to go coach or use my CU broadcast journalism major and get into broadcast? What am I going to do? And then this league gets announced. And at the same time, the ABL was around, which was the other pro league.
I forgot about
And
that.
you had to make a decision and sign a contract before draft, whether you were going to be in the WNBA or the ABL. And if you signed with one of them, they both had clauses in there that if you did not get drafted, you couldn't go try to get a spot in the other league. And in my class at CU, there was another post player who's, one of my best friends, Erin Scholes, who was an All-American, again, a post player. She was much better than I was. And she and I both were given contract opportunities with both leagues. And my whole strategy was to wait until she decided what league she was going to go in, and I was going to go in the opposite. And she chose ABL. And I was hoping that she would choose ABL because I knew the W had the NBA's backing. And I felt like it's going to have a chance because it's got that backing and it's got that support. And David Stern was such a believer in it. And Adam Silver, by the way, does not get enough credit for what he did with the launch of the W with Val Ackerman. So, it was very, again, like God wink, fortunate, full circle moment that, here I am back into the league officially and getting to participate in it. But every pivot and literal crossroads in my life, the WNBA has shown up. And its timing's never been better.
So I had this theory, and I don't know if I've kicked this. I don't know if I've kicked this around with you or not. I did with the old Dallas Wings coach, the 1-2 coaches ago. I'm blanking on her name. Was it Vicki Johnson? Is that who it was? Okay.
Yes.
So I threw this out to Coach Johnson, and I'll throw it out to you. In my mind, the most significant team in the last 30 years in any sport was the 1996 U.S. Olympic women's basketball team. More so than any pro team because pros are established. The Miracle on Ice team was 1980. The Dream team was 92. I'm going 96. And because until then, the lineup of all of those details for that team were damn near perfect. They went on this big barnstorming tour. They had personalities. They had good players. They run the table. They go to the Olympics in 96 in Atlanta. They blow everybody out. The WNBA is launched, and it works. It's not without its bumps, but it works.
Yeah.
And I looked at that team, and I thought they were more significant than even the 98 U.S. Olympic women's or a World Cup soccer team because they were first, so to speak. And as I look at that 96 team now, that had great players, and Hall of Fame players. You had Ruthie Bolton, you had Rebecca Lobo, whose presence on the team was, I forgot, a bit controversial. Jennifer Azzi, Lisa Leslie, Cheryl Swoops, on and on and on. And Katrina McCall. And there's another one. There's a player I don't think ever gets the credit she deserves as one of a top 3 player of all time. So with all that being said, I'm convinced now that when I watch women's basketball today, and I see how good these players are, I think if you took a WNBA All-Star team, or even a Liberty, let's say, that finished first last season in the WNBA standings, that they would beat that 96 team. Vicki Johnson did not agree with me at all. She pretty much laughed me off the floor. But you played then. You've seen the evolution of women's basketball. What do you think of that?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say, I think these are like fun conversations to have, but impossible conversations to really have like a true answer. But I do agree that team was historic and a catalyst, I think, for all women's sports. My college coach, Seal Berry, was an assistant coach on that staff with Tara Vanderveer. So we got to kind of hear and see it from a different lens, through her lens, which was really incredible. We scrimmaged against that team.
How'd that go?
Which we got our asses kicked, by the way. And our coach coached us thinking we would have a shot at it. Then we had to come in, like, we had a rule that you had to run a suicide for every turnover over 15 in a game. And we ran like 20 suicides after that game. And I'm like, are you serious? Even against the Olympic team, we have to run. But it's just what I think is really special too is how many of those people associated with that team are still an active, important part of our game today. And leaders, what Lisa Leslie does for our team, and Carol Callan, who helped put that team together with USA Basketball, who's a Hall of Famer herself. She does not get enough credit for where our game is today. And again, I think that team, I completely agree with you that it was a catalyst for the explosion of women's sports.
So you've been around as a player and a coach, now as a general manager, and seen, talk about catalyst, is the explosion of analytics in terms of evaluation of players, right? Players, strategy, go to the corner, shoot threes, your better percentages are there, your better percentages are here, and it has completely altered the way the game is played, the way the game is trained for, all of it, and across the board in every sport. With the now that you're in, I mean, you were essentially a general manager as the head coach of TCU and other teams, with the access to all this data, which is just, I was talking about it to a Major League Baseball player the other day. It's staggering what's available now.
It is.
Do you think, Raegan, it's improved your batting average, your shooting percentage in evaluating a player and assessing their ability to translate either on the college floor or the professional floor?
Well, time will tell a little bit. This is just an area that's changing so fast. I had heard one time that, a med student goes through med school and what they learn in year one of med school is not even applicable a lot of times by the time they've hit their fourth year.
All of it's outdated?
So
wow,
a lot of it's outdated. That's why, again, I think about that when it comes to analytics, because every year there's new arguments for an analytic or against an analytic or a model, same way. That I just think about, we have to be careful. You pay attention to it, you learn from it, but you have to be careful because not every analytic is important to your system. And you have to really figure out and find out what are the analytics that are really important to your system, your offense, your defense, what a player needs to be or doesn't need to be. And sometimes just because we can measure it doesn't mean you have to measure it. So again, get clear that what you need to be measuring. We've adopted a model that I know, we didn't come up with it, to be clear. The Spurs, I think, are the originators of it, who I think are also some of the people always on the forefront of analytics. Kirk Goldsberry out at University of Texas McCombs School.
Did you talk to Brad Stevens about this? Did you know Brad was way ahead of this, way ahead of the curve when he was at Butler?
I have talked to Brad about this. Yeah, I've definitely talked to Brad about this. He's influenced this as well. But we use a model called eyes, ears, and numbers. And it's in all of our roster construction decisions. And we're going to look at everything through an eyes. That's really the coaching lens, the eye test. The numbers, which is the analytics leg, and that's the data to inform the decisions. And the ears is kind of that culture bucket. It's learning like who they are as a person, who their spheres of influence are, where are their threats to culture, what do they need to be their best self, and what a lot of data that I've learned from people who have utilized this model is some of the worst decisions they make on personnel is when you evaluate those three legs and you make a decision when the numbers leg is extremely longer than the other two. It usually ends up being a mistake.
So you see people are evaluating based on points, rebounds, and assists, or 6'6".
Only.
when you look at, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's still important. It's important. I'm not trying to say that the analytics is important. In fact, I'm saying it's very important. You also have to balance it with those other two.
So when as a coach GM, and I've asked baseball people this, and I asked Rick Carlisle this one time when he was coaching the Mavericks, what he thought of plus minus. Plus minus had been a hockey statistic, and then it worked its way into the NBA. And then a whole bunch of baseball type statistics worked their way into the NBA and college basketball. And now you have access to it. Yeah. Raegan, what statistics do you look at? Numbers do you look at that you would tell a fan or me, say, those are good numbers. Those are pretty good numbers to look at.
I think you have to be careful about plus minus. I think you have to be careful about on-off stats. Like when they're on the court, when they're off the court, how a team is producing. Because, sometimes like your superstars aren't going to be on the court when it's a blowout at the end of the game.
Right.
And, you have to, there's a lot that goes into it. We look at a lot of like defensive metrics. We look at LeBron metrics. We look at, just shot quality. That's a big one, is shot quality. So that's basically looking at your shot efficiency to kind of sum it up in real brief terms. We like to look at lineup data, not just for like our own team, but if we're evaluating a player that is not on our roster, we want to see what kind of lineups are they best a part of. When do they really, really stand out their best? When we looked at a Kelsey Plum, for example.
Good player.
Great player. We're so excited to have her. With Kelsey, the Las Vegas Aces' most efficient lineups were when she was at the point. Their second most efficient lineups is when she was at the 2. So then we looked at who were those other players on the floor with her. And then we also looked at her USA basketball lineups. Wow. So again, their best lineup, she was at the 2. Their second best lineup, she was at the 1. So then we could take another look at what's the archetype of the other players on the floor around her. So again, I think if you just look at an analytic in a silo, you could really make a lot of mistakes. You got to see and understand what other analytics lean into it. A lot of times you'll see a team that might be a really poor offensive rebounding team. And then you can criticize them like, God, they're a terrible offensive rebounding team. But then you start to look at it like, oh, but you know what? They're best in their league or in their division or their conference at transition D.
Okay.
Well, it's because they're not crashing the boards. They're building back. So you really have to understand the intimacy that those analytics lean into each other on and how they braid into each other.
All right. There's a subject that we have not talked about before in all of our many discussions, and that is, this one really perplexes me as someone who tries to, ignorantly aspire to fairness. What a stupid aspiration that is. I look at women's basketball, women's sports in general, but women's basketball, let's keep it on women's basketball, and I see a long list of men who coach women. And in fact, I think now the NCAA Women's Basketball Coach of the Year Award is named after Gino Auriemma. I think that's right. Gino's.
I don't know.
Maybe it was some award. It's some coaching award in women's basketball that's named after Gino. Gino's great. I like Gino a lot. I've interviewed him. Oh, is he great for a guy like me? No disrespect to Gino, but I'm like, wait a minute. This is women's sports, and we're naming an award after a guy. This is Raegan. This is a question about why do we accept that a guy can coach women? The LA Sparks have a history of men coaching women. Not that there's anything wrong with it. There are tons of WNBA teams, college programs, Van Chancellor, on and on and on. But yet that transition or jump has not made it the other way where women are coaching guys. And I've seen it with my own daughter playing youth sports. Why is that?
Geez, I mean, this is like you should offer to teach this class at TCU and let it be a discourse. But, um, well, my dad's a coach of women. And so I've grown up, I think, in a lens of like, I think Title IX has a lot to do with where women's sports are today. I also think dads
Oh
are
yeah,
a big
yeah.
part of where women's sports has taken the steps that it's taken. Um, and I'm okay. I'm comfortable. I mean, the majority of the staffs that I've worked with when I was a head coach were predominantly
Hmm.
women. Um, I think, the biggest question is not should men be coaching women? It's why aren't women coaching men? I think that's the bigger question. We're at a point right now that should be more common, I believe, at all levels, at the high school level, at the collegiate level, at the pro level. I don't think it needs to be token hires. I think that like women are really proving that we know how to coach this game. We know how to teach this game. And I think women will bring something to a men's staff that will only be additive.
I think there's a
That no one
component.
else on that
I agree,
staff.
because I think there's a component to the thought
Yeah.
process that is different. And the reason I say that is someone who read multiple books about the CIA and their manhunt to catch bin Laden. And the best operatives
Hmm.
were women because they thought
Yeah.
differently than guys. And it allowed a
Yeah.
logic for them to pursue a thinking and a rationale that escaped most men. Not because they were dumb, just because they didn't think of it. And that's a component. I'm like, wait a minute, we're spending all these money on these teams. Why aren't we entertaining this more? Why is
Hmm.
Becky Hammond the
Yeah.
outlier? Why are there's just a few? When you mentioned tokens, what's it going to take for it to become a little bit more common, where you see a woman on a bench contributing, where the guy
Yeah.
recognizes this person can make me better?
Well, I think you're right. I don't have a lot of disagreement in any of that. I mean, you've got on Rick Carlisle's
Oh
staff in
yeah,
Indiana,
Jenny
Jenny
Busick.
Busick, and Jenny is not just there taking notes and stats. She's a huge part of their defense and what they're doing. And I know she's relied upon in to help manage and get out in front of certain situations that could be a real threat to what they're trying to accomplish on the court. Lindsey Harding is on the Lakers staff, and I know she is a significant part of their their on court coaching as well. So I think it's getting more common. I do agree that I think they bring a lens, a diversity to thought making or thought and decision making. Um, I think we're getting closer, but I would say this, like we you until there's not just women at the table, that it's actually women are truly a part of the
Yeah, I agree.
decision making. We're not going to see that shift change. So when you see more women athletic directors, and it's not just women, it's people that represent intersectional identities that there's more diversity to that. There's more thoughtfulness to that. So it's women of color. I think when you start including more diversity and women at the table making the decisions, we're going to see that filter down, I think, into coaching staffs, and it's just normalized.
All this stuff, just you want it to happen now,
Yeah.
and stuff just takes forever. I have two more questions. I'll let you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a general manager. You were a coach. The role of general manager has changed a lot in baseball. Basketball, I
Mm-hmm.
can't tell. Does the role of a general manager allow for you to talk to your team, or is that reserved for the head coach and their staff?
I think it depends on the organization and the dynamics and the relationship, I think, between the head coach and the GM. This is another Brad Steven drop of wisdom that he shared. And actually, Dr. James Cash,
Oh,
who's
yeah.
also given me great counsel over the years, said the same thing, like double down on the fact that you're a coach. Don't hide from it. Don't run from it. Don't try to excuse it. Use it as a strength. because again, like the essence of your job is to build a great team. And that was your job as a coach as well, is to build a great team. And, I think the element of partnering is really what I'm trying to do, is create great partnerships, a great partnership with the organization and the team. Myself and the head coach having a great partnership, our coach having a great partnership with the players, all of us having great partnerships with their agents, as opposed to these dictatorships. It needs to be more of a partnership. And I think when there's a true culture, there's shared language, there's shared values. But I think it's knowing when it is your place and where it would be your place to speak up or say something. But, my messages to the team is, if I'm speaking to the team as a group, it's really in support of what we are all trying to accomplish together. And, I say this a lot: straight spine, soft heart.
Straight spine, soft heart. Last question, Raegan. You ready
Yeah.
for this? I know I've taken you forever.
Yeah.
This is a fun one. You are part of the LA Sparks family, which is part of the LA Lakers family. They made a big trade a while back. I'm sure you probably read about it. The Los Angeles Lakers acquired Luka Doncic in the trade with the Dallas Mavericks. I still can't even believe that I said it, that it happened. What has that done, that trade made? And I know LA is ungodly big. It stretches from,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
Raegan, can you speak to just what a shock. I mean, as a basketball person, not to criticize anybody, but what that's done for, what that's done for the Laker community and basketball community in greater Los Angeles. I mean, you live there in Manhattan Beach now. So what's that been like?
Well, I think when you live in LA and you work in the sports world in LA, the Dodgers and the Kings and all of that, it's like, it's championship cities, or championship or bust. There's just that mentality. And so I think what it did is it brought some hope that they could actually win that championship, and that there's, the cavalry's arriving to help LeBron and the rest of the guys that are there. And again, I think it's reflective of the direction of the game. Anthony Davis is an incredible player he's going to do a lot for the Mavericks as well. But I think, JJ Redick's style is become more open the paint up, spread the paint out. And, I think there's you see that happening with how they're playing. The paint in the court just got bigger with Luka on the floor. So I will say, I think that there's an excitement and an energy. It's cool to share the same arena with them, and you walk down a hall and it's like, there's LeBron. Like, I get to work out in the gym, not just the court, but the little weight room that Kobe worked out in. And man,
you spent time with Kobe.
I
don't know if a lot of people know that. You spent time with Kobe.
Coaching clinic time. He took me to go watch his Mambacita team play and practice a few times, which was incredible, especially now. He was transformational for women's sports in the WNBA as well. So but when that trade happened, my initial instinct was just thinking about the humanity of it all. Nico's life and Luka's life and Anthony Davis's life and, Max Christie's life, and and also all the talk around all of it, and the criticism and the anger and the excitement and the elevation of everything. And meanwhile, there's these people literally packing a bag.
Yeah, they're moving.
It's a lot.
Well, you've done it. I mean, you've lived it, so you're obviously aware of the humanity. And I think, people in my job, it takes a while to learn that. It took me a while. And then I think becoming a parent, and then screwing up, falling on your face, realizing the inexact science of any of this stuff, of the jobs that you had as a coach. You sit there and you tell a kid, do this, do this, do this, and then they know it, and then they don't, right? And you learn that eventually when you're in my job and you spend time with people, you're like, oh, they tried. And the 18-year-old kid was distracted because they didn't get enough sleep last night because they were in a fight with their parents or their girlfriend, whatever. And like you said, the humanity of it.
Well, and Mac, that's the straight spine, soft heart. Like they both can exist. We just kind of have to balance each other and check each other on.
Well, I'll say this last thing I'll say. You were part of something that I'd never seen before. And I was really happy I was there when you had announced that you were resigning as the head coach at TCU. You coached out the rest of the season. In your last home game, there was this impromptu party on the floor. Like all these parents came down, all these players came down, and I had gone to watch. And I never do that anymore. And I went down to watch just because it was you. And, I got to know you and Harper and Keith and your son and all that. And I'd seen this, and I remember thinking, I might do this again for another 10 years. I'll never see this again. I'll never see that again. Just that. And it spoke to me.
Thank you.
What they all thought of you. And that's in this climate, to foster those kinds of relationships, even though the record, which has become increasingly transactional through no fault of anybody's, but to foster those kinds of relationships where people came down to support you, even though the season hadn't gone the way anybody wanted, spoke volumes. So that was a pretty cool thing to see.
Mac, that's TCU.
That was you. That was you. That was you. I know you won't take the credit, but that was you. That was you and your staff and the players and everybody to sit there and celebrate it, even though you didn't win, says a lot. And I commend you for it.
Thanks,
and I really, as somebody who's gotten to know your kids a little bit, especially your daughter and especially your son, I give you and Keith all the credit because it's not easy, and they're really neat kids, and I know you're proud of them, and I'm just eminently impressed by what you've done. And do me a favor, don't be a stranger. And I wish you all the success in the world. Thanks for your time, Raegan.
Thank you so much.
All right, see you, Raegan.
Right. Appreciate you.
This is a Stolen Water Media production.